Delightful. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. You've got Gregory Junkbond Carpenter. You've got Suzanne Supergal Sherman. We've got on the side, we've got a man who will at first amaze you and intrigue you. And after you get to know him, just boggle your mind. We got Booger on the side here and Jeff Johnson behind the controls today. Wake up, Cerberus. It's time to go out, take that walk, and enjoy life. This morning, I am sitting in the People's Democratic Republic of Northern Virginia. Suzanne is somewhere in the hinterlands of Utah. Jeff Johnson is hiding in the ice-filled backyard of Pennsylvania, and Booger is whereabouts unknown. Thanks for coming in and joining us today. I always like to start with something very classical and move on to something just tragic from there. So starting off with Eine kleine Nachtmusik, Jeff, K525, one of my favorites, composed in 1787 by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. You didn't think I knew all that, did you, Jeff?
Nothing surprises me, Greg.
I played that in a couple of orchestras I was in. There's 4 movements. The first is the Allegro, which Jeff just played. Then there's the Romance, the Minuetto, and the Rondo. So just in case you were curious, we love Mozart here.
And that was easy for you to say.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? This is one of, it means a little serenade. It's what it means. Eine kleine Nachtmusik. So just in case you were curious, Jeff, just wanted to be a sharing individual today. Gosh, how is everyone today? Suzanne, give us our background, our lawyerly stuff, and let us get moving in the right direction, please.
Well, good morning. And yes, I am hunkered down here today in the Wasatch, back out in the hinterlands of Utah, and we have another storm alert. We just finished the worst storm since 2008. Yesterday, I just finished clearing my driveway, and now the snowdrift has it essentially covered again. So I'll be hunkered down here today, and want to warn everybody, when you've got this awful weather and you don't need to go anywhere, just stay home. If you can avoid getting out on those roads, that's exactly what I'm going to do today. You can follow us on Facebook, by the way, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page. Want to thank all the new members there. CRN, SoundCloud page, Twitter page for all our shows, and the YouTube page. Please like and subscribe. We had an interesting request yesterday. I'll ask while you're on here as well. Somebody wanted to know if we could close caption these episodes. My immediate research told me they have programs available for this, but they cost about $1 a minute. So if anybody else out there has any options for those of us that have followers that are hearing impaired, I'd like to help them out. We're already helping some of those that are audio impaired by reading, or visually impaired. I'm reading some of our articles so they can hear those. So we're trying to make it so everyone can hear us. So we really appreciate the requests. And let's see, if you go to our Radio Co, I was playing around with our phone app too for the Android, and I believe that is still up and running. So please, you can take that with you and listen to us. And it used to be called the Renegade Rambler Radio Network, and I believe you can find it now in Play Store under the Cerberus Radio Network name. So we'll get that finalized and updated for you as soon as possible. That being said, I think we're ready to fly.
Oh, my bad.
It's
my bad, sorry.
I think so.
No, the show is not waking up Greg. It's waking up Cerberus.
Good morning, Greg. No, that's wrong. I'm on the wrong network, for God's sakes. All right, first things first, let me throw something out here that I came across. So one of the things, let me start like this. I was trying to think on how to introduce this. I used to be the guy in the federal government who made the Kool-Aid. Not the guy who drank the Kool-Aid, not the guy who prepared the Kool-Aid. I actually made the parts. I didn't just take the powder and mix it with the water. I created the powder. And I made the water. And then I served it to everyone because that's what I did. And when propaganda gets to a certain point, I don't like it. I think it goes too far. Well, for the past 10, 15 years or so, I have despised the propaganda that I have been seeing out of the press in the United States. And I feel vindicated today because this morning, the BBC and the India Times have both reported that NASA says India and China have taken maximum efforts to make the Earth green again in the past, how long? 20 years. For years, we've heard about how bad China is and what horrible people they are and how nasty they are because they're destroying our planet. This is the propaganda that we've been fed. And I sat there and I grit my teeth and I felt downtrodden because nobody identified and corrected the fact that this was not the case at all. Quote from NASA directly, NASA, an anonymous NASA official said, no, this was the director of one of the programs here at NASA. China alone is apparently responsible for a quarter of the world total increase in leaf cover, despite possessing only 6.6% of vegetated land on Earth. This comes largely from its forests, 42%, and croplands, 32%. In the case of India, however, 82% of the greenery contribution is from croplands, with only 4.4% contribution from the forests. China and India account for 1/3 of the greening, but contain only 9% of the planet's land area covered in vegetation. So let's think about that for a minute. We've been told that China has been, destroying the atmosphere since the 90s, right? Everything that they have done has been detrimental to us. They're the reason for all the pollution. They're the ones who have the cities that are bogged down in smog that makes every day in LA look like a sunny day. When in fact, it's not really true at all, is it? Is there smog in China? Yes. Are the pictures shot at such an angle that it makes the smog look worse than it is? Why, yes. We have people that are very skilled at this stuff. And it really annoys me to know that it's been propagated and allowed to continue for such a long time. I had to get that off my chest. Suzanne, I hope you don't mind me using that one to start off the show today.
No, I'm curious though. Have we heard other sources besides this article about NASA showing that this is to be the case? Because this is the first I've heard that they're not the actual polluters. So, and I wonder why our government would lie, and then our government would also have. Well, I guess this is an anonymous tip telling us.
So part of what.
You cracked me up there, Suzanne.
Why would our government lie to us?
Look, you guys are getting way off track.
It would.
You two are killing me. I mean, this is our government. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And you're going to get it, doggone it.
Hold on a second. Let me get my sparklers out so I can have some sparklers here to wave around.
Yeah, it's not like our government has never used an official agency to mislead us.
It's
incredible.
I can't imagine. So yeah, actually, this is from NASA.gov. That's where it was posted, and professor at Boston University expanded on what NASA posted. So it is extremely interesting, but it's not. It's one of those links that you have to click to click to click to click to click to. In order to get to the page that you can click to the one that actually has the article in it. So if you're looking for this thing, you might want to consider packing a lunch, because it took me about 15, 20 minutes. You can't just get there by clicking, putting in search words like NASA, China, green, India. It didn't come up. There's about 1,600,000 search results that told me how bad China and India were, as opposed to this article being published just today at the BBC. And I found that most of my research efforts have landed me with overseas news medium. Very few times in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years for me, have left me with a news medium within the control of these here United States that has given me something that the government has stated in an honest and true fashion. I've had to go to BBC. I've gone to Al Jazeera because they actually have reported many, many times extremely unbiased on different incidents, different things that have happened, and have taken our government's manipulative twist out of what's been reported. I'm
Greg,
sure there are dozens of other news medias out there, but those are just a couple that I've been using. Yeah, Booger.
no, this was Jeff.
Oh, my bad.
Go over to Washington, D.C. and go to the Temple to Lincoln, get down on your hands and knees and beg forgiveness for blaspheming against this government that was divinely created. Don't you know?
I'm disturbed, Jeff, that you would go that far. I don't even have my missalette to take with me, so I know when I should kneel and when I should pray, and frankly, I mean when I should sing the Gloria to the doggone government.
So,
Suzanne, why does it say that on the Lincoln Memorial this temple is dedicated to what in God's name? Why do we have a temple erected by the federal government? I'm sorry, I don't mean to get off track, but where the heck did that come from?
again, that was the point of my article, Church of National Government. I wrote that in response to the knee-jerk reaction, pun fully intended, of the football players in the NFL. And I decided to explore why we have this calling out, why we have the national anthem at the beginning of the sporting events. And it goes beyond just being patriotic. This was actually a policy from the Department of Defense to encourage recruitment in the military. So now, and this is what I noticed too, they'll parade out if there's a local hero. This happened last year at the Summit County Fair. They showed a picture of a local veteran who was killed over in Afghanistan, then all of a sudden stand to honor his sacrifice. And I think, why do we keep standing to honor these sacrifices without first asking why we're sending them over to these places as cannon fodder? And it seemed to me that this was just a way of shaming people into standing and reaffirming that the first and foremost purpose of this whole event is to not honor our military, but to encourage people to keep joining, enlisting. They can pursue these wars. And I keep saying, I know I've got a lot of veteran friends. In fact, I've got a couple on this show with us. And I ask myself, and I know this isn't a popular viewpoint, but why do people keep enlisting knowing that we have not been in a truly defensive war? And the last one is debatable, so I won't even go into there in the auspice, under the context of the show right now. But why do we keep enlisting to go to Syria, to fight in Syria? Why are we enlisting knowing what we're doing right now? Do we really want to give up our lives for anything going on over there?
I saw a movie twice. The name of the movie is They Shall Not Grow Old. It's by Peter Jackson, and it is the World War I documentary that he was asked to put together by the British government. And he took thousands and thousands of minutes of World War I film, and he fixed it. He brought it up to the right speed because over time, film, it warps, it stretches, it condenses based on heat and cold. So he restored the film. He added authentic color based on existing uniforms and historical documents of what the colors of the uniform were and things like that. And then he hired lip readers to identify what all the people in the video were saying. So he added sound to it. And then on top of that, he took all of the World War One actual archives, the audio archives of the veterans and what they had to say about the war. And he added hundreds of these guys talking. And then he made it 3D. And it was an amazing experience. If you haven't seen this and you want to understand the horror of World War One, so you would never want to go to war, I would suggest that you watch this movie. They had it on limited release over Christmas time, but now you can go places and actually watch this thing.
What's the title again?
They Shall Not Grow Old. And you actually see guys who were going in the first wave who left the Maginot Line to charge the Germans. And they knew that within 30 minutes, 45 minutes, they would be dead on the battlefield. And you read that through their faces, and it jumps out at you and sends a chill down your spine that you never, ever forget. I've never seen footage like this in my life. But there was a scene in there where they talked about having the fresh new recruits who just went through training march through the streets of London. And they did this in various pomp and circumstance manners. And they would inevitably have all these people end up following them. And they would walk them right into the base and right into the recruiting station and sign up every eligible man that was there, because they had all of a sudden been filled with the spirit of national war. Not to mention, Britain did not have to get into this war, but they did. There was issues with the banking industry collapsing and things like that. So they needed the revenue from war. We can get into that another day. But I thought it was interesting how they tricked and lied to and set up this whole display for their own people to trick them into joining the war in the first place. War is horrible. War is terrible. Don't ever want to go to war. I don't think I have to tell this audience that much, but don't ever want to do it. It is a zero-sum win. And talking about zero-sum wins, Jeff, I'd like for you to give us a little bit of background about being a zero-sum teacher.
Oh, you want to talk about that? Okay.
I would love to. I think this is the most incredible article yet.
I found an article about a teacher, and I got rid of the article, but I believe it was Florida. She was fired because she gave the children's there that did not turn in their homework or their assignment zeros. So they gave nothing. They deserved nothing. So she gave zeros. They fired her because she gave zeros, because they have a zero tolerance. So,
oh my God,
she was required to give them a 50% for turning nothing in. Now does that not just illustrate the world of hurt this union is in?
Boy, if there was ever a level of futility that could be assigned to the futility of its very own existence, I would say that scores about a 10. It comes to mind, I think of the Willy Wonka sign. You took fizzy lifting drinks, you get nothing. You gave nothing, you get nothing. Good day, sir.
Yes.
And that's what I would expect out of this, but the kids turned in nothing. And this wasn't just one kid. There were several kids that turned in absolutely nothing and got 50s, or they were reassigned 50s, I might say, on their homework. So the zero was not left to stand. And I don't understand how you can do this if your contribution is zero. I mean, somebody help me through this. Your contribution is zero. You have given zero. You are supposed to get something. I don't follow that at all.
So these kids grow up and then they eventually get jobs and decide, I'm not going to go to work this week, but I'll get half pay. Is it going to work that way?
Oh, like unemployment?
Yeah. Oh, so it does work that way. Okay. Well, there you go.
That's the welfare payment in grades.
You know what it kind of gets into? It's whether or not you're successful doesn't matter. It's how hard you try. And I like the old mechanic comparison on it. Okay, there's two mechanics in town. One of the mechanics at 20% of his ability, but he always fixes every car. Another one tries his very best every time, but never fixes the car. Where are you going to take your car? To the one who does his very best, or the one that only tries 20% but never fails? It's just.
Wait a minute. That sounds like a trick question.
It's how hard you kids try. Whether or not you succeed, that's not important.
Yeah, pretty much so. I think that there's a lot of people out there, and I don't mean to be. Oh dear. Baby Sasquatch is leaving the house, so every single puppy in the house wants to say goodbye to him. I find it very okay, guys. Well, I find it very interesting. Yeah, they're all being poo-poo heads. They want to go see. Every time Baby Sasquatch leaves the house, they want to go with him because why? Because they know that he's going to go to the gym. And our puppy Luna, this is the black lab. This is the mentality of a black lab. It's not because she's black, so stop it. She likes to get on the treadmill. Can't get her off. This thing will walk on the treadmill all day long and not get off. And I think to myself, okay, I'm all for, fitness and stuff like that. Yay, rah, I like to see people getting fit. Notice how we use that phrase there. I'm not big for it anymore because I'm getting old and I just can't move the way I used to. But doggone it, this dog won't get off. He finishes his workout and this dog is still walking on the treadmill. This thing won't stop. Oh, drive me crazy. Okay, everybody settle down now. Thank you. So, Booger, I think that you've got a good point. You really do. I know people that try really hard, right? But just suck at what they do. They're horrible. And they're never going to get any better. So, yeah. I mean, what do you do with someone like that? Do you sit there and, pat him on the back and say, oh, I'm going to come to you anyways because you can't do anything that you're supposed to be doing, but I still believe in you.
Andrew's waving in 50% is the participation trophy or the non-participation trophy. Just isn't put in there. Go ahead, Booger.
No, and I really think policies like that, zero tolerance for zeros, actually contributes to the thing of success doesn't matter. You take it one step further. Okay, you should have at least tried. Up from the zero tolerance of zeros, you take it up just if you would have tried, you would have gotten something. And I had a daughter that didn't do very well in school one time. She's like, well, I did my best. I'm like, that really doesn't matter. If you fell in the river and you did your best to swim back to the bank, but you drowned, you are just as dead as the person that did not even try.
Boy, you're a tough dad.
I was. They bring that up sometimes.
Are you sure you haven't been counseled for being a tough dad?
I'm sure I would have. When we first moved to the States, I was going to spank a daughter for something she did. And she brought up the point, Dad, we're in the States now. You're not allowed to spank us in this state. Where she got that information, I do not know. But, you're not allowed to spank us here. I said, I have been waiting on you to return with, some information like that. And let me explain to you what will happen. Okay. We will put you and your sisters on a plane back to Panama, and you will get spanked all the way to Panama, and you will get spanked frequently in Panama because you caused the whole family to move. Now, do you want to push that button? Yes, no, she didn't push that button.
My mom's side of the family is from Sweden. My mom's from Sweden. And when I was visiting there last time, it was, and I believe still is, literally against the law to spank your own child. And I saw the results of this because one of her relatives had not a toddler, but the maybe 5 years old. This kid flat out refused to get out of the vehicle. Every adult around, we're talking about 4 or 5, including the mom, the grandmother, my mom, me, and I was probably 12 at the time. Everybody just begging her, sweet talking her, cajoling her. Why don't you want to? They were all afraid to just take her by the hand and remove her from the vehicle. We had a place to be because they were afraid somebody was going to call the police on them.
Incredible. Yes, and be aware too, in Latin America, it is getting that way in a lot of countries down there now. Panama's one where if someone wants to make an issue out of it, they can. Okay, that's one of those things that the grass is not always greener on the other side.
That's too bad. That's too bad. It's
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Well,
What I've
go ahead, Booger.
What I have, we do this to each other all the time. Go ahead, Greg. It shows we're unrehearsed.
That's right. We right off the cuff. Let me tell you. So Booger and I have been doing this for years, back and forth, where we talk over each other, and then we talk to each other and with each other. It's a very exciting situation. I mean, it's worth the price of admission. Let me tell you, folks.
Folks, you're getting what you pay for this morning.
This is 100%. This is full frontal insanity. But I mean, I told you this morning. It's like once you hear this guy, he's going to boggle your mind, and then he's just going to confuse you because you're going to have so much information.
Okay, you both have got these already. I've already given you guys a grade of a 50 already, so you're okay.
But we're trying our best.
We're trying so hard.
Mr. Jeff, please. Don't make it harder on us than you have to. I might get a 49.
No, I've seen you studying, so I know that you you try your best.
Well,
so hey, let me ask
depends.
Junk Bond, do you think this new release, this information from NASA that we started this show with this morning, is in any way tied to all this discussion now about the Green New Deal?
Oh, funny you should bring that up, my friend. Thank you for. Are you reading my cue cards?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The hacking thing goes 2 ways.
What line are you on? Let me see. Holy cow. Yeah. So, exactly. So we're looking to
just because this article, just to interject, of all of a sudden now they're saying they're relying that this whistleblower here is relying on satellite imagery. Are you telling me before the New Deal, this Green New Deal discussion came along, that we didn't have these images available?
Yeah, we didn't have these images available for the public to see and to share with the public. We did have the images available because they're always available. They've been available since. You remember back in the day, there was space race with Soviet Union, was very bad thing. Now we have thousands of satellites that capture images all over the world, and they've been doing it for 50 years. So guess what? We've been tracking, and we understand completely how the demographics, how the tree coverage, forest growth has all. I mean, one of the stories you don't get to hear, but it's going to come out. It's going to come out because of the new Green Deal here, is how the forests in the western U.S., despite the, quote, ravaging fires that we've had, has actually expanded. The total acreage has increased ever since they actually have records when they do archaeological and environmental analysis. They've gone and taken the dirt records and identified that, okay, the forests have expanded since 1776, go figure, to now the acreage of forest is up over 30%. And the reason for that now is that we're able to stop and control these fires that otherwise would have gone through and destroyed much more acreage like it did in the past. There was no way to stop something if lightning hit trees back, in the day, or if the Indians did a little bit too. Oh, did I say Indians? No, yeah, I did. Okay. So if the Indians had a little bit too much to drink, then and fire got out of control. Smokey Bear wasn't around. The propaganda tool of the 50s wasn't around to remind the Indians that they need to put their fires out. So fire got out of control. It was out of control, and it took out much more acreage than they do now. I don't know the exact amount of controlled acreage that has been saved because of our advanced forest firefighting ability. That number was represented on a graph, and that number is also down too. But you're going to see a lot more of this information. Our world partners are the ones who are leading this effort now. You're going to see how other countries. I've looked at the forest coverage in Europe and how it has changed ever since the Middle Ages, based on historical records and information that was available back hundreds of years. You're going to see how much better the EU is than us. You're going to find out that, wow, even Brazil is better than us. And we are going to have to step up our game just like everybody else in the world. And the bottom line for you and me, it means more restrictions and more taxes.
More control, because what we've seen before is, well, we need to lead the way and set a good example. And I don't think that's as much of a rallying cry for the rank and file Americans who think, well, I don't think I want to take more out of my paycheck or surrender that much to set a good example for the rest of the world. It's a lot easier to say, look at the great example these other nations are setting. Don't you want to be like them and catch up? We are the leader of the free world. We should, and now we're behind in this area, so we need to catch up to them.
I think it's important because, being a minority myself, I really feel that our government should step up. Is it Jeff? Are you laughing back there? Is that you? Because you're a minority too, pal. You better start claiming it. Yes, the most populous demographic on this earth, my friend, is the 33-year-old, 5'6" tall, black hair, black eye Chinese guy. That is a majority on earth. And the second highest demographic is the 5'7", black hair, dark skin, black-eyed, male, Indian guy. So you, my friend, aren't even in the top two categories. I think you should claim minority status right now. And you better get on some of those special categories. You're going to need some help, because we're going to send you back to school, Jeff. And I know your grades. So we're going to be able to use a couple of the federal programs now that we've identified you as a minority. And being a minority, I mean, you do work in law enforcement, so you do have a disability. I think we can claim almost every federal program out there and get you to go back to school for free. You on board with this?
I would rather just have the money. I don't want to go back to school.
We're talking reparations now.
No. You need to get relearnified.
Well, that was why Booger was here. He was going to give me an education.
I will
become an expat.
That's right.
I am.
We need to finish that conversation up from yesterday too about where to go from here. But let me ask you this: how much? And then we're going to go over to what we brought Booger in for today. Anyway, although he's welcome any show. How much of this new Green Deal do you think has already been implemented to the point where the way has been successfully paved for this to be implemented, if not, in 10 years? How much has already been done? I think a lot.
I think a lot too. I just got my personal copy of the new Green Deal, and I'm going to start reading it this afternoon. I'm so excited. Um, I know that they have to pass it so we can see what's in it. So even though I read it, I won't understand or know what's in it until they pass it.
There's from the AOC, Che Guevara's own website. There's a Green New Deal facts there as well. And it's from a blog post, I guess it links to webarchive.org from the government. So what is the Green New Deal? And you just read this and it sounds like this is such a fantastic idea. What could possibly go wrong? You know, the things like the carbon credits, that was a pretty radical idea, but aren't we in one way or, shape or form? Haven't we already implemented something like that already? And whatever these smart meters, what have they paved the way for us as well?
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, absolutely. The carbon credits. That's the thing that made Al Gore rich beyond his wildest dreams. They started trading those on the floor of the Chicago Exchange.
And wasn't that rejected by Congress, and we still have it?
Yes, it was rejected by Congress, but it was implemented by the EPA.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you didn't miss a trick in there at all. So Booger, how is South America these days?
Well, I want to comment on something that's actually kind of in that arena that's going along with you guys talking about carbon credits. If you really want to see the difference between having affordable energy provided to a population and not providing it, for example, in the Dominican Republic, the government actually subsidizes the cooking gas. Okay, the little containers, same as in Panama. Get on the satellite footage and look at the Haitian border and the Dominican border. Okay, one is very forested. Okay, the Dominican side, and the Haitian side is barren because people are chopping it down because they don't have. Yes, because they got to cook, they've got to eat, So there is a perfect example that's, on the Latin America side of it. If you
send them more money.
You're correct. We will. We've rebuilt Haiti multiple times. And if you really want to get a Dominican upset, say Dominicans are nothing but Haitians looking for boats. Oh my God. They will get upset. There's that friction between the two sides of the island. And, like I say, you get in Latin America and the prejudice is much stronger between different cultures than it is here in the States. But I guess now you guys would like to talk a little bit on moving down there, some considerations. Am I correct, Jeff?
Yeah, yesterday was just kind of whet my appetite. And I was actually on the internet for quite a while yesterday after the show, and I figured out a whole bunch of just neat facts. I found out about shipping containers from Florida to Honduras, for example. I found out a certain size shipping container would cost you about $1,300. So you could get all your household goods down to these places at a reasonable price even.
Yeah, you can actually. What you'll want to do, this is advice, if you're going that route, go down there and actually talk to customs officials before. Okay, you'll want to talk to customs guys. You might be able to find some loopholes and some things under the table, and some of them aren't really loopholes. To give you an example, most everybody sending their cars to Panama, as we did, which I wouldn't recommend, but we did when we moved back down the third time. But whenever you go to send it, most people pay to have the vehicle stored, and they pay a pretty steep price in an inbound customs warehouse or parking lot. Whereas you go down there and you find out that according to Panamanian law, you can bring a vehicle into Panama if you're bringing it in as a tourism thing and drive it around for up to 90 days. Okay, so I brought it in by boat. But then I went and filed, and it does not specify that the vehicle has to come across by land. And I went and filed, got my car out of customs the very day it came in on the ship by doing that process as if I were driving across the border from Costa Rica, and saved myself quite a bit of cash. Yes. So, look at little things like that down there. You're not going to be able to do that with your household goods. Also, get into definition of what a household good is. That may sound ridiculous. But you'll want to do that. And then some places, like, for example, Panama, they'll tell you you can bring a vehicle in import duty free. But you later find out there is still a hefty introduction fee. Okay. It's not a duty fee, it's an introduction fee that, if you aren't prepared to pay it, can be a little bit of a pain in the butt.
What's an introduction fee? What would that be?
It's another way to get money. That's what it
Well,
is.
sure, I
That's-
got that. I mean, but how would they? I mean, what do they classify it as? Is it something that you're bringing into the country that would be naturally,
You're
not
bringing
brought
in
in? Is it
invasive.
something new or different, or
You're bringing in an invasive automobile into their ecosystem, and they have to have an introduction fee to introduce it to their.
yeah,
something new that they haven't had
even
before?
though your vehicle, yes, even though your vehicle is running much cleaner than the ones belching smoke and everything that's on the road down there currently, yes, you're going to negatively impact the environment.
And that was one thing with Honduras I found out on their website, the government website, is that if you want to bring a vehicle in, it has to be 10 years or newer. It was just one of those kind of weird rules I found.
Really?
So
That's
so
interesting.
so that sounds like, again, at least an attempt to clean up a little bit, because so some of the things that the U.S. government's done over the years is, and this might come as a shock to some folks, might not come as a shock to other people, is to ensure that the economies of South and Central America have maintained a depressed state. They haven't been able to get their economies up and running as our economy is, because they didn't want to try to compete, or they didn't want anybody to be able to compete with our economy in this hemisphere. So, bringing in or limiting the ability to bring in the smoke making things 10 years or older is kind of a statement, I think, on the part of those governments to say, okay, well, you know what? We're tired of you only allowing us to have crap. We're actually going to tighten up our regulations a little bit and try to clean up the act down here, despite what you've done to and for us. Is that anywhere close to what they're doing, you think, Booger?
Yeah, there is a lot of pull back and forth. You'll see very good policies put out by the governments in a lot of those countries, and then you'll see the influence a lot of times of money. It's similar to the states, in a way. And then you have the big UN agenda down there. If you're moving into a country in Latin America, you will want to check how much they've signed up for UN Agenda 2030. And I'll reference Panama frequently on this, but it is just one example. At my farm out in Panama, legally, I am supposed to pay $15 to get a permit to cut a sapling. Okay. It's insane that you've got 25 acres, and if you've got a little sapling on it that wasn't there 5 years ago, you have to pay $15 to get a permit to cut it down. And it's having a negative effect. Very negative. They never look at that side. People used to plant trees all over Panama with the intent of harvesting the trees. No different. To me, saying don't harvest the trees, it's saying don't harvest the cornfields, or we won't have any more corn. Yeah, it's insanity. But people are not planting trees hardly at all down there, because once you plant a tree, you lose the right to that piece of property without paying a tax to use your property right there.
Wow.
But you know what? We're implementing those agendas from Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 in the United States. I mean, you see all the roundabouts going in. I mean, it's all straight from the UN. So
Yes.
it's not terribly different than here.
No, it is not. One of the here's the big difference I see down there is the control grid is not near what it is here in the States. You get out in the hinterlands, and whatever law they pass in the Capitol really has very minor effect on you.
Well, I think that was part of our discussion yesterday, that even though there is government there, it doesn't seem to have the tentacles and the reach of this federal government here. And I have one other thing, because we have about 14 minutes. Wanted to get into one of the other things I found on their website. Now, I don't know if this is true in all of these Latin American countries, and maybe you can expound on this a little bit. In Honduras, they require you to prove you have $2,500 a month income to immigrate into Honduras. Are there many of the other countries have some similar rules regarding income?
Most all of them do. Panama has the same thing. You have to prove you have income to migrate in and actually get any form of a residency visa. You have to prove that you are not going to be a burden on that society. Now, the Venezuelan crisis, they finally shut it down. They were accepting refugees. And if anybody says, oh, the people leaving Venezuela aren't really Venezuelans, they were people that went there for work, I've heard that storyline. Let me tell you what, I know a whole lot of Venezuelans that will differ with that analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Panama is the same way. You would have to go. You've got to actually show your bank statements and everything. You have to come with a clean police record. This is also advice for anyone who is going from the States to down there. If you talk to the people down there in the government, when you're getting your police records here in the States and you're going down there on a residency visa, they'll say, oh, that thing has to be apostilladoed at our consulate in the States. No, there's at a Hague convention, you can actually get on there and you'll find the actual year at the International Hague Convention. Almost all the Latin countries signed up to, okay, as long as it's done in the home state of the person there at an official office to apostillado, then we will also take it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to go through the consulate necessarily.
It does not. Yes, depending on that country, if that country signed up for it. That's, as I get in the thing here on this, anytime you go to move into Latin America, take other people's advice, but ensure you make your own decisions. That's going to be key. Yeah.
You're going to have to do your own research. We can give you a little bit of a heads up or an idea about what you should do, what you should bring, what you should expect. But the bottom line, like anything else, is do your own research and find out for yourself what is the bottom line truth for your situation. Yours might be a little bit different, and everything that we're talking about here, may not apply exactly as it worked in Booger's situation. It could be completely different. So don't be surprised, when you face something different. If you're going down there for work, or if you're going down there for tourism or something, and it doesn't. If you go into the police office down there, it doesn't work when you say, "Well, Booger told me," that doesn't work so well. It doesn't work well here. It doesn't play well anywhere. Again, just a heads up, but do your own research too on top of that. Now, I got one question about being down in Latin America area, Booger. If you're going to go down there, I mean, we've seen over the years that we have gone through and ravaged crops, a lot of fruits and things like that have been, the mainstay of some of their monetary income for the countries down there. But I mean, are there any countries down there that you would say have an overall better food supply or food safety as opposed to some of the others?
I've never looked at it from that angle, so I really wouldn't want to, throw it out. So I have not looked at the food safety in any of the countries down there. A lot of those countries, you can go to the big supermarket chains. This is an advantage of being down there. You can go to the big supermarket chains that have the processed foods, but the mom and pops vegetable stands are all over the place. But now there's pros and cons on that also. For example, in Panama, a lot of the people that tend the crops do not read or care to read very well. you know, a lot of the poorer people. They don't read very well. I won't say they don't read, and they do not bother, for example, using glyphosate, and cancer's getting rampant down there on it, to actually read and see that they're applying it, even though it's horribly poisonous and carcinogenic, where they're at least applying it in the healthiest manner. So you will see, okay, just because it's a mom and pop's place does not mean that mom and pops is not using an incredible amount of glyphosate whenever they're, you know, cultivating their crops.
And I wouldn't say that it's for that it is related to maliciousness. I think it's just maybe negligence on their part, right?
Yes, it's negligence, and that's what it boils down to on it. We have some people that farm on us occasionally, and we will not allow them to use glyphosate. Just won't do it. But you know, it's one of those things to get down there. You'll have to really get into the area. I suggest to, if you really want to eat healthy and everything, actually go to the mom and pop's place and then ask them, say, hey, I want to be a regular customer. Can I go and see how you're raising all of your stuff, and actually go there and talk to them? We have family in Panama that live up in the mountains of Volcan, and they farm a lot, and they do their best to farm as organic as possible.
Interesting. So, okay, so it's not just a U.S. fad then. There's people that are really
No.
interested in farming right and doing the right things.
See, that
Yes,
was what
it's
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, that's it. It's becoming more and more popular down there. People are really waking up. McDonald's business is dropping off drastically down there.
Good.
People are starting to wake up and be very concerned about the processed foods. This is a funny thing to note too. You go to like Kentucky Fried Chicken in Latin America, the chicken pieces are extremely small. Okay, you know, as opposed to here in the States where they're these huge legs, huge thighs. Down there, if it's locally growing, they're fairly small.
Yeah, Suzanne and I were talking about this yesterday. That you know, I was looking at some of these properties down there, and there was some rather large ones. You know, a couple 100, 300 acres for sale at what we would consider up here a pretty reasonable price out in the. And these were hinterland. These weren't near the cities. And I was saying that with these type of places, you have such a long growing season down there. You can have apples and peaches and all manner of good fruits, and you can grow practically year round, I would imagine.
Apples and peaches and pears. Oh my!
Oh yeah, you can. And especially if you set up to irrigate, you are spot on down there. You can grow pretty well year round. Well, actually, you can grow year round as long as you irrigate down there. One thing on any time you're buying property somewhere, you'll want to check. For example, Mexico, you can't buy property unless you're a citizen. But any contracts, you can get a Spanish and an English contract. But be aware that if you end up going to court with the person you signed that contract with, because you think you're getting ripped off, only the Spanish version is used in court. So you would probably want to make sure anything you're doing down there, any translation that is handed to you, if your Spanish is not up to snuff, you would want to go and get it translated at your translator that you choose. And maybe even have the contract, just find a good lawyer somewhere, which, oh my God, that's hard to find down there. Wow. It really, really is. Find a lawyer that will give you good advice on what's in the contract in Spanish.
And that was on the Honduras's website, that they really strongly suggest you get a lawyer to get you through all the intricacies of the laws down there. And there's one other thing that was interesting about Honduras is that you can only buy a third of an acre in the first 5 years. You have to live there 5 years to become a permanent resident, at which point you get all the rights and privileges everyone there in Honduras, and you can buy more property. So is there stuff similar to that in other states? Obviously Mexico, no, because you'll never have the same rights and privileges as a citizen. But in other places down there, is there other similar type things?
I am not aware of any, okay, that have a limit on how much you can get initially. So I know that when you first get down there and you apply, for example, in some countries, you will apply for your residency. But until you actually get that residency card, you do not have the full rights. And a lot of times that residency card can take you 1 to 2 or more years, depending on how good your lawyer is.
That was something I was just going to ask you. How long can you expect to wait for residency? But obviously, you just answered that question for me. I find that rather similar to the way our systems and our processes work here too for residency. Sometimes it can come along quickly. Other times it takes quite a bit of time for it to actually happen and mature. Which it is what it is. I think when you look at something like that in a legal sense.
I have a question for you too. You guys had a great show on what really happened in Venezuela, and it wasn't really as people thought it was, that they just voted socialist and the whole country just went to hell in a handbasket.
Huh.
What do you think is the possibility of what happened to Venezuela happening to, say, Honduras or any country we decide to relocate to down there? Are they vulnerable like Venezuela was, and then we end up in another Venezuela? We move to Honduras to be free and left alone, and end up in a Venezuela in 10 years.
I would suggest you look at the mineral resources of that country. If the country is very rich in mineral resources, anticipate a similar Venezuela situation. I'm not saying it will happen, but you can anticipate that. And what I say, a country that really doesn't have a whole lot, especially petroleum, that someone wants. Now, gold is a different issue. Then it just seems like there is not as much drastic change taking place in the country, because there are not those hidden forces, jostling for control of those resources. And a third world country's natural resources can be bought up for pennies on the dollar compared to a first world country's natural resources.
Right, but then first world country. So I would agree with what Booger said there. Absolutely, look at the natural resources. Look at and if you want to see who's going to have influence in that country in the future, look to see who is investing in those natural resources. For example, in many places around the world, the Chinese have purchased almost all of the rare earth metals. So you'll want to look at the countries that actually own those and where they're mined at to see where their influence is. And you can expect more influence from those types of countries in the future. We own almost none. We have to purchase them all from mostly China now. And things like that are used in a lot of our advanced weaponry. So you would really think, you would say that, well, you're kind of at the back end of the power curve being here now, because we don't have control over what goes into our advanced weapons anymore. So there's this domino effect of everything. So is there ever going to be an end to high interest in third world countries and collecting all of their natural resources? I don't think so. And I think you could expect that type of behavior almost out of any other country in the world.
Isn't it fair to say that we have that?
We have 1 minute, unless we're going to go past the top of the hour.
Totally up to you guys. My quick question was, look at the United States and how much of the quote public lands the federal government controls out west here and the minerals compared to the eastern coast and the middle part of the country. For instance, up in Oregon in the Malheur Range, we had a standoff there, and the federal government's interest, I believe, in uranium up there. I think we're going to have to wrap up the show. It's been an hour. Hopefully we can come back tomorrow. And on behalf of Booger, Junk Bond, and Jeff Johnson, I'm Suzanne Sherman. You've listened to Waking Up Cerberus. Is that what we're calling it now, guys?
Get out of bed, Cerberus.
Wake up! So thank you for joining us. This has been the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Thank you for listening.